Hello all. I want to do a video, or I should say a small series of videos, 10 minutes each or so, about the bioenergetic systems in the body. I want to address misconceptions about them. I want to address how they're properly understood and to some extent applied as well in our practice as martial artists. This video comes out of some of the questions that I've encountered from you, Brian, one of my students, which are good considerations because they bring things that people commonly understand as without question, to a point where we can look at them a little more carefully and understand them as they're supposed to be understood, okay? The biggest of these is this first misconception about internal energy, which I will be addressing as our first such concern. People think the breath is the internal energy, okay? Breath is the oxygen you take in and out of your body. And one of the first connections to life understood through our breathing has to do with when you're trying to assess before modern technology existed, when a person was dead or alive. Often a mirror would be taken to see if there was any sort of breath activity, okay? Placed under the mouth and the nose. So breath is connected to life. We understand that. Our lungs take in breath, oxygen, yada yada. However, with that being said, the breathing ultimately becomes a form of metabolic control, exercised along with other aspects which help you develop your internal energy. And what does it mean to develop our internal energy exactly? Again, let's look at the reality historically, and then we can start to unpack a little bit about some of these reference points we mistake as absolutely true when they're simply reference points. In Chinese metaphysics, traditionally, qi is the stuff that forms the basis for everything. And the differences in objects has to do with the density of the qi. So for example, things that are lighter, like our breath, a piece of paper, a feather, things that are more dense, like a bowling ball, some such thing. They all have different densities, so they all have a different reaction. When we look at the body is made up of many different types of systems that all have their own densities and their own particular structure, okay? The idea of understanding qi has to do with how these systems function uninhibited and the ability to keep them functioning without any sort of a hiccup or a clog particularly, okay? And to that end, when you look at Chinese medicine, the idea of internal energy, a lot of the methods are geared towards keeping the channels open and able to circulate the different densities of qi one needs in order to live in the body, live for the body to be healthy. This is not so different than some of the other traditional medical systems. If you look in the West, a lot of the older medical systems were based on what were called humors, different substances in the body with different densities, different aspects of liquidity to solid as a ratio, etc. And how these humors in our body were kept in a way that they were not subject to dis-ease, okay? Disease. So there's a lot of similarity, okay? With Indian Ayurvedic tradition, it's much the same thing. You were dealing initially with how your internal energy works up and down your body. However, when we talk about these internal energy systems, they are not breath per se, okay? They have their own point of reference, and it happens to be intangible, okay? So, one of the big differences when we look at these things from a medical point of view, which is where they came from, if I want to show that you have a cancerous tumor in your liver, let's say, I can cut your body open and I can take off a mass of tumorous cells. Now you have two absolutes. You have the liver itself, which is located in a specific part of your body, and you have the cells which correspond to the symptoms of the condition. Internal energy are intangible. Those points that we are working with, you cannot open the body and pull them out, okay? So when we look at a point of reference, they are not absolute, nor are they tangible, as I just said. They are simply a means to describe the circulation of this energy, which is controlled metabolically and psychologically through your actions. Okay, I'm going to be looking at this occasionally to make sure we don't go over 10 minutes for each segment. So, different traditions might point out different points on the body as being relevant. But again, if I tell you this is where your kidney is and this is where your brain is, there is no real point of reference there beyond how we use a system of terms to give specific directions. When I take those organs out of your body, they're very obviously, empirically real and tangible. Okay? Real is not a good word. Let's say tangible. When I talk to you about the different points on your body where your internal energy comes through, they're just as real, but they tend to be intangible with respect to finding an exact location or trying to pin them down to any sort of a physical bioenergetic framework within the body that is validated materialistically. Okay? So, let's look at some universals about your internal energy dynamics before we go any further. Everybody starts at your willpower, just under your navel. Okay? If you look at, for example, the Zen Zazen tradition, both traditions, the Soto and the Renzai, okay, it deals with your navel area as the center from which you direct your breath in order to create the right conditions for meditation, okay? As you get a little bit more into other traditions, primarily esoteric, then you come up to an emotional center, usually placed around your heart or in your throat, okay? This again comes up along your body's straight path, okay? Eventually, after that, these two paths, let me back up. Here, your emotional area and your willpower are very physically directed and controlled, okay? Some don't even really preface this point. But when you start to go to the next point, your third eye point up here, this becomes the first point where you start to broach the immaterial aspects of your identity, okay? Your third eye point is the bridge of consciousness, okay? And it starts to take you into a sense of all-encompassing reality outside of just your physical self, okay? Finally, after that, you have the crown of your head and auric energy. And these two, right from here, are totally outside your physical reality and deal more primarily with the whole part of your being, yourself, your consciousness, your identity, your soul, whatever you want to call it, that is part of your physical body, but is not tangible and is immaterial for all practical purposes. All right? Now, you can reference those points any way that you want. Okay, we're going to go on to the next video. Hang on. Okay.